Good afternoon, and welcome to our last segment in our virtual job searching strategies series presented by the Redlands Community Foundation along with the Redlands Chamber of Commerce. I'm Shelley Stockton, and I serve on the boards of both the foundation and the chamber. This partnership has been a great opportunity to share resources with the community and encourage economic growth for our area. Since all of our panelists have been previously introduced, I'll simply say thank you again for sharing your time and your expertise with all of us. Let's welcome for the last time, Evan Cassimy, Kelly Dries, and Kevin Eldridge, along with the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, Chris Alvarez.
Well, thank you all again for joining us today. This is the last in our series of 4 videos featuring virtual job searching skills. And you've all been introduced already before by our foundation and one video by me. So what we wanted to do today was just have a group discussion to kind of play off of each other's expertise. Evan, Kevin, and Kelly, you all come from these different backgrounds, but the skills that you talked about and the tips and the tricks that you talked about, they all interrelate. And so it'd be great to kind of tie them together. And Evan, when we last introduced him, he has his own company and worked at San Manuel, but is recently relocated to Amazon. So now he has, even more expertise since his new focus is IT recruiting. So with that, we'll go ahead and just jump to Evan to start us off. And I remember you talked about hero stories and small talk and that sort of thing. So maybe that's a good place to start. And then Kelly, it'd be great to hear how you leverage that in a virtual platform with LinkedIn. And then Kevin, how does that work when you're interacting with the businesses that you work with and the clientele that you work with? So maybe that's a good place to start because it's something that can be done in person or virtually.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, Chris. I've been recruiting, like I said, for over 6 years in a lot of different industries, most recently now with Amazon and IT. So today I just kind of want to talk about telling hero stories and what that can do for you as a job seeker or candidate when you're, going along the hiring or interview process. There's different stories that you can tell. I like to have at least a sales pitch or a hero story ready. And they really need to be professional stories that talk about how you saved the day, how you thought outside of the box and were able to either solve a problem or an issue or save on the budget. And most importantly, because everybody knows at the end of the day, the bottom line is always the budget. How are you making money for the organization or how are you saving the money? So having a couple of those stories ready is so crucial to your job search and just overall interviewing in general. And it's very important that you are very loud and very proud of those experiences. I noticed we have Kelly on here and she's very, proficient with LinkedIn. So I always recommend with job seekers that they kind of promote themselves, utilize those platforms like LinkedIn to kind of tell their story. That way, hiring managers and recruiters don't have to pull that out of you as a candidate. When we're doing our background checks or just research on you, we can just go to your profile and say, hey, the story is consistent with what he told me in the interview. So I know, using these platforms like LinkedIn is very crucial with your search and how you tell your story, because everything is social media nowadays, right, Kelly?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this idea of the hero story because I think there's so many ways that you can demonstrate that on your LinkedIn profile, both to showcase, as you shared after the interview, they can go in and verify like, yep, okay, this is true to what they were saying to me. But I think also up front, recruiters are using LinkedIn to look for talent. And when they go to your profile and they see, instead of general bullet statements from your resume, they see some strong stories that share more detail and information and excitement about who that person is. That's more compelling for someone who's looking to hire you. And I think there's so much you can do with LinkedIn to make yourself stand out, both from the summary standpoint of really telling a solid story about who you are as a person, and what your strengths are, but also within each of your experiences, using those hero stories that Evan talked about to really bring in and hone in on what your accomplishments have been within an organization, not just what you do, but really why it matters and why someone should care about it, I think is really critical.
Kelly, I know you were talking about LinkedIn, but so often people think about the positive. When you think about LinkedIn, you're thinking about the positive, but people don't think about those other social media platforms that we use where it may tell a whole different story than what you're trying to portray to the employer. Have you had that or come across any of those scenarios where a person said one thing online, but then the other social media platforms told a whole different story, and it didn't put them in the most positive light?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say if you haven't Googled yourself, Google yourself.
Yeah.
I tell all students and anybody that I work with and coach, Google yourself and sign up for Google Alerts so that you know what's being put out on the internet about you. Because it's not just what you put out there. It might be something somebody tags you in, and then it's there and it's associated with your name and your brand. So being able to Google yourself, and there's websites that can help you clean up your presence. I think especially I work with college students, and sometimes there are things online that they may not want online, but they don't realize someone tagged them in 6 years ago when they were still in high school. So, how do they go through and really clean that content up? And something like LinkedIn is a way to put something positive and professional out there. But I think you're absolutely right. It's also kind of going in and cleaning up what may not be as positive.
Yeah, Kelly, you brought up an interesting keyword that I love to use with my clients and just candidates in general. Is you talked about your brand, your career brand. And so often, job seekers, they forget about that, that important part of the job search is their brand. Who are they? What do they represent? Using platforms like LinkedIn, having a solid resume, having solid experience and a good reputation, those are going to be the things that help just like build and establish your brand, and ways to promote your brand are utilizing LinkedIn. So, having good hero stories, things that talk about, de-escalating situations, customer service, how you've gone above and beyond or solved a major problem. Those are things that will help foster a positive career brand, and promoting yourself on LinkedIn, having good endorsements, having a strong network. Those are things that are going to help build and solidify your brand. And then you don't have to apply to jobs. Jobs will basically apply to you.
Wow, some good information. So thanks for giving that part of the story. But as far as brand and all that good stuff, really, I've spent so much time focusing on people, really helping them to focus and pay attention on the information that they're putting out. I always say to people, as it relates to the resume, it's kind of, your resume is kind of like your lawyer when you're not going to appear in court. It must be able to represent you and be able to articulate your skills, your abilities, in the event that you're not able to show up. In most cases, we're not walking through the door, peddling our resumes, and we're handling it to people. We're applying for jobs and we're sitting back. And one of the things I focused on, Evan, during my time is so often when people go out and they apply for jobs, it's kind of like, okay, I'm gonna throw this information at them and then I'm gonna hope and pray that someone calls me back. And so we're in this posture of waiting, hoping that the 10 resumes that we sent out. And there's really no, in this age, especially as more people start to go to work, there's not enough recruiters, HR professionals in the world that can go through all that. So what are you doing to run under that, to follow up, to say, hey, listen, did this connect? Did it make an impact? Or maybe, trying to go and do the extra leg of research to try to identify, hey, who is that recruiter? Who is Evan? Let me find Evan. Let me at least follow this thing up, because perhaps if Evan got a chance to look at it, he's probably, and I'm not the best candidate, he could probably offer me the best feedback as to why I did not connect to that opportunity. Yeah. Or may give me another shot to say, oh, you know what? I didn't think about that, Evan. I do have that experience. So.
No, that's very, very important for a job seeker to understand, is that you don't want to just throw your resume out there and just apply to positions. That's one of the traditional ways to look for a job. There's also non-traditional ways, just like you mentioned, Kevin, like finding out who that recruiter is, finding out who the hiring manager is, using LinkedIn, Kelly, and just trying to connect with them, grow your network. But, there's a famous quote, I forget who says it now, but it goes something like, he who gets the job is not the most qualified, but it's the one who interviews the best. Interviewing is a combination of networking, showcasing your skill set, and being qualified. So utilizing LinkedIn to connect people and doing your due diligence. There's all sorts of resources, I'm sure, Kevin, as you know, that job seekers can use. LinkedIn is one of the most powerful ones. There's all sorts of extensions for Google Chrome, like Lead Leaper, Swordfish, or Octopus, and they'll help you connect with people and just exponentially grow your network. So it requires very little time, and it helps automate that process.
So I want to jump in with a follow-up question on what's been discussed by many of you. And I think Kevin touched on this specifically, but all of you have at one point, is where to go for assistance with your job search. So we're talking about traditional and non-traditional ways, and then you just mentioned some resources. And keep in mind, this is a broad audience. So there might be some college students who need that introductory job. And so the search might be a little bit more broad. It could be that someone worked with a company for 10 years and the pandemic forced, furloughs and shutdowns or closures. And so maybe it's looking for something in the same industry or a completely different shift in career. So I'm sure there are myriad resources out there. So let's not spend eternity exploring that. However, I would like to hear from each of you, because you each work for different organizations and have different backgrounds. What are some ideas of resources of assistance in the job search, or where to find jobs? Is people might think of Indeed or something like that, but is there something better? And how do you leverage those the best? So I don't know. I think, again, each of you will have areas that you probably know better than others. So if you each want to throw some out there, that would be really helpful, I think.
I think I'll take the lead on that. Well, I mean, my organization, the America's Job Centers, is kind of like the hub of job search resources. Okay. If you're a person in college, one of the things, I work for a private college. I've worked for a community college. What are the most immediate resources there to help me? A lot of colleges, a lot of community colleges, universities have career centers. They have career centers. There are people there that work, and their whole job is to help you get placed. So find out who your placement officers is, or your career development specialists. Find out who they are. Find out where that resource. And I'll say this: instead of waiting to the point that you graduate, I would go and build. My first day of school, I'm showing up to the career services office. Why? Because I want them to know who I am. Not only that, as I began to make progress with my degree track or whatever, hey, I'm jumping in. Listen, I just completed my XYZ certificate, and I got an A or whatever. I want that career development specialist or that career placement officer to know a little bit about me, so that in the event they're helping me, or maybe they're conveying my information to an employer, they have some perspective of who I am. And it's not that I'm just showing up at the point of trying to get a job. Now, on the other side, if you have because we don't, as Evan, Kelly, most people are not experts in job search. You do hair, you are a construction worker. That is what you do. I'm going to leverage the talents of someone like Evan and Kelly or myself, who know how to get it done, or a career center, or in my case, the America's Job Centers of California.
Yeah, no, that's great. I would definitely start there as a job seeker, especially if you have no idea where to go. Like I mentioned earlier, some of the traditional ways are just kind of scouring the job boards, but that only gets you so far, but that's also what everybody else is doing. So taking those non-traditional approaches is definitely going to set you apart, utilizing things like recruiting agencies. Before I started my career being an in-house recruiter, I started working for an agency where it was kind of like sales. We're calling up businesses to recruit for them. And those are free services. Recruiters don't get paid for their efforts except for by their clients. So as a job seeker, I can go to a recruiting firm and say, hey, these are my skills. Can you help me find a job? So utilizing services like Kevin's or a recruiting agency, that'll help kind of speed up your search. And then obviously LinkedIn, I'm sure Kelly knows a ton about that and how you can leverage that, but I would definitely go there next.
Yeah, and I would say, I think one of the best ways to get a job is utilizing your network. And if you don't have a network, how can you tap into a network and use resources like Kevin shared to build your network? So I think, I talked a lot about it's not what you know, it's who you know, but I think it's further than that. It's not who you know, it's who knows you, who knows your skills and qualifications, who knows that you're job seeking. And I would say that's true whether you are a graduating senior from college or you are 30 years into an industry and you experienced a layoff or a furlough, or you just woke up and realized I want to do something different with my life. Networking to me is where you start. And you know, that's something that as you're going, like right now, I don't want to say I'm comfortable in my job. That's not the right word, but I'm not job seeking at the moment. However, I am actively cultivating my network every day, because in a year from now, there might be an opportunity that comes up that I want to jump on, and I want to make sure that my network knows what I'm doing. So I have a quarterly newsletter. I would not call it this to those people, right? So hopefully none of those people watch this, but on a quarterly basis, I send an update to the people in my network that I value. They're kind of like what I would call my board of directors. And I let them know what I'm up to. I let them know what I've achieved, and I let them know what I'm seeking next, so that they know, and they're not just hearing from me when I want that next step, but I'm keeping myself top of mind for them. And these aren't just random people I've met. These are people that I've cultivated deep professional relationships with. But I don't want to just be reaching out to them when I'm needing something. I want to be able to communicate what's going on with me and open up that conversation for us to be able to chat about what they might be going through and how I might help, because that networking really is a relationship and give and take. And I think it's so critical to the job search. I think the statistic is 80% of jobs are gained through networking. And I mean, that's a big portion of what you should be doing if you're job searching.
So I am happy that it went this direction. It's exactly what I was hoping for. I would love you all to expound a little bit more on networking. I've met people, I work at the chamber, so I meet plenty of people that are already in business, but you know, a lot of the younger professionals I'll interact with will say like, well, it'd be great if we do some sort of program about networking and how to network. What is networking? How do you do it? Again, I think that there's lots of different ways to do it. And so each of you will have different experience and a different perspective, I think, that of course overlap. But what is it? How do you do it? And then something that Kelly had talked about, if we can all expand on that as well, is how do you expand it? So thank you for going that direction, Kelly, because it just dovetailed beautifully into what I was hoping we cover. And again, this is useful information for job seekers, but even those, as you just mentioned, that are not comfortable but not searching.
I would say, you know, start with, again, I'm always talking about what is the lowest hanging fruit, you know. For example, you know, I go to church and most of the people in that church, I don't know what they do. I don't know what they do. I know them as Kevin, I know them as Jason, but what the power of networking is that if you are in need of something, if you tell one person, or you tell, let's say 15 people, you now have 15 people looking for you. You now have, you know, if I say to Evan, hey, Evan, you know, hey, listen, I just lost my job. This is what I do. I'm talking, throwing in those hero things that you talked about, those hero statements. And I'm telling him, hey, listen, this is what I've done for this company. I've been able, but I was recently laid off because of X, Y, Z. And because I have a personal relationship with Evan, if you duplicate that 15 people, in the event, because Evan is going to cross 17 to 20 people a day. Mm-hmm. So at some point, someone is going to come up and say, hey, listen, I'm looking for an IT manager. At some point, there's 17 people. It's kind of like how diseases spread. Yeah. It spreads exponentially. I think I'm using a word that's kind of hard to use that word, but it spreads. Or if your child comes home with the flu or whatever, or some type of cold, you know, it spreads. So our networking has to be looked at like that. Evidence, I need to let everyone know that I know that I'm looking for work. And sometimes it could be a little bit embarrassing having lost the job, because our jobs are attached to our, sometimes some of our egos. And so I want to let as many people know. So while I'm sleeping or while I'm going on with my day, I know I have 20 people out there that I've told about what I'm looking for, and they're out there searching for me, given my relationship with them.
Mm-hmm. I heard somebody once say, good people know good people. So as a recruiter, you know, knowing good people is going to help maximize my chances of closing this job requisition with a good person. You know, so if you present yourself as a good person and you network with people, they're going to put you in that category in their mind and say, hey, I know there's a good person that would be perfect for this role.
Good person, yeah.
Yeah. This is the perfect candidate, or a purple squirrel, as we like to call them in our industry.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. The purple
yeah,
swirls.
networking is so crucial. You know, it definitely it's free marketing at the end of the day. The very first resume ever was essentially a commercial. It was an advertisement put out in the newspaper. It was this guy, he was a handyman, wanted people to know about his skills. So he put out an advertisement and said, hey, this is what I've done, this is what I can do, and this is what I charge. You know, now it's been more formalized into a sheet of paper, but essentially you're marketing yourself. And what networking is doing is free marketing. Just like companies who never have commercials on the radio or television, but yet they're, you know, Fortune 500 companies. You know, there's tons of clothing companies. The only one that I can think of right now is maybe like Hollister or Abercrombie, but they've never had a commercial, and it's all through word of mouth.
Oh, wow.
That's what networking is.
Yeah, I feel like I want to add two things here. One is I think networking can sometimes get a bad rap, and I hear this a lot from college students, that it's like, well, I'm not extroverted, I can't network. I hear that often. I am as far on the MBTI scale as you go. I am an introvert through and through, and I actually used to despise networking because that's what I thought. I thought it was going into, like, at a conference, going into one of those big networking events, and there's 300 people and you don't know anybody. That's what I envision networking to be. And those kinds of events, for me, I am still not successful in if I don't do a couple things in advance. And I'm not going to go through all of those things that I do now when I go to those types of events. But what I do and how I network is through something called an informational interview. And I would recommend this if you're job searching, or even if you're not. I think it's a great way to build your network, as you had asked, Chris, of how do you build and cultivate a network. I think you can use LinkedIn to do that, and to find people that are doing really, really cool things, and to reach out to them and say, hey, you know, my name's Kelly, and it looks like you're doing some really interesting work in this area. It's an interest of mine. You know, would you have 30 minutes that we can jump on a Zoom call, and I could learn a little bit from your experiences, because I would love to follow in your footsteps one day, right? Yeah. Most people are going to jump at that because people love talking about themselves, and they're going to be excited for the opportunity to share their wisdom and expertise with you. And you can then soak that up. And that's not just you're soaking it up because you want to work at their company. Networking is also relationship building. It's information gathering. So it could be that you're talking to someone because that's a path you might like to pursue. And you can ask questions like, how did you get there? What would you recommend I do? And then you can do those things. And then if you really liked that person and you want to talk to them again, follow back up of how you implemented some of their advice and have some more conversations about it. So some of the people in my board of directors are people that have been cold outreach from LinkedIn, that just, we had a connection when we talked the first time, and I kept in touch, right? Some of them call me a persistent pit bull because I don't let those people go. Like, once they're in my life, you're in my life, you're in my circle.
And networking can be something as simple as just being a compliment. You know, like you said, that was great. I love that. You know, just saying, hey, I see what you're doing out there. That's awesome. You know, do you mind if I lean on you with a couple questions every once in a while? Just something as simple as that. You don't have to always be selling yourself, which you technically are, but, you know, asking questions, maybe asking them to be an informal mentor in your life, or an expert you can ask advice from.
So I feel like the three of you on this screen are a good example. I'll briefly kind of share. So Evan, I didn't know. He connected with me on LinkedIn. And then as I was talking with the Community Foundation about the idea of the series, I remembered, oh wait, somebody on LinkedIn just connected with me. So I searched, you know, by the keywords, found him, like, well, he reached out to me, so he must be open to something. And here we are, you know. And so, and now Evan's probably regretting it, because I'll text him every so often with different questions. And yeah, tough luck for him. And then Kelly, I remember I met you on my last day when I worked at the University of Redlands, and probably not your first day, but you were being introduced to the division I was in. But because of, again, the network that existed with the folks there, you know, we've stayed in touch and collaborated on some other things. And Kevin, I remember meeting you, I believe, with your boss at something hosted by the city back in early 2020 or late 2019. But again, during the pandemic, we stayed connected because, you know, after meeting you, I realized, oh, you know, you have some resources there. We can connect with businesses there. So that's three completely different ways that I'm connected to three people, as an example. So to kind of show something tangible based on what you've all said. So I will say, I think we have
now I can say this, I now have 2 additional people in my network now.
Exactly.
I'm adding you on LinkedIn as soon as we get off, Evan.
Absolutely.
Evan.
Because I've never met these guys. Guys, you guys have to believe us. We've never met before.
Yeah, I don't even know their last names.
No.
So, so to leverage, another, 5 to 10 minutes, I think we probably have about 10 minutes, which seems like an eternity when you're filming something, but what are some kind of last takeaways? Again, keeping in mind what you've talked about in your individual videos during this series and what's been discussed today, what's something that we haven't talked about or that we've just kind of glazed over that maybe deserves, a little bit of a deeper look to help people in their job search and their networking strategy and their branding strategy. I'm going to leave that to you. So whoever wants to start that, again, it's an open field. I mean, it's a very broad question, but being the experts on the screen, I defer to you.
I can go first. One thing that Kelly said really hit home for me. I like how she touched on your brand, your career brand. Like I said, I mentioned that a lot to my clients and candidates. Just really understanding who you are as a job seeker or as an expert or a professional, and cultivating a solid career brand. Being very confident in your skills, your hard and your soft skills, and knowing which skills are transferable. So things like working with people, data, or physical objects, and just being able to confidently talk about them and summarize them, so you're not, kind of just rambling on, but just having a solid sales pitch or, elevator pitch, as I like to call it, and just, really know how to foster that career brand and network. So that's kind of what I would really just kind of focus on as a job seeker, is that career brand.
I love that, Evan. And I think for some folks, especially working with college students, I think a lot of times they struggle to articulate, like, what is my brand? And I know even for me, until recently, I would have said, like, well, I'm a really hard worker, right? Like, I didn't have the language to articulate what that brand was. And an activity that I did that I can't remember where I got this from. It is not my activity. I will say that I don't know where I read it or soaked it in. But it was something about asking the people who are in your close network, who know you well. So some colleagues, maybe a boss or supervisor, maybe some mentors, to share with you what are the 4 words you would use to describe me, and what is 1 word you would not use to describe me. And that for me was a really helpful activity. I asked that to about 10 people that I would say a mix of colleagues, a mix of people I supervise and who manage me. And when I got that back, I did some analysis of that. Like, what are the words that are coming up from multiple people, and how can I use that to really articulate what my brand is? Because clearly that is my brand, whether I like it or not, right? So maybe if I didn't like it, it would be, how do I change this? But I liked it. And I thought, okay, this is a great way to start to really be able to encapsulate who I am and how I can present that forward, to do what Evan just said of sharing that career brand with people in your interview and online.
It's a great idea.
Well, my biggest takeaway is everything that you guys have said, and just really, so often I've been doing workforce. I've been in workforce since 2002, and having sat with hundreds, maybe thousands of people and counseled them, you really have to take care of yourself. Some people, when you lose a job, it can be a traumatic event for some people. And, the dealing with the loss, there's a degree of mourning that comes with losing a job. And so taking care of yourself, trying to work through what happened, especially if it was a negative situation, and trying to focus yourself on positive reinforcements, people who are going to build you up, people who are going to really tell you what you need to hear. Maybe some old coworkers that still work from the company that could still give you some positive feedback on, hey, what you could do different going forward. And I think every lesson or every opportunity comes along, even if it's something bad, we can always build on it, because it's not that we learn in moments of triumph, we really learn in our moments of failure. And so really taking those things into consideration. And the last thing I want to say really is, you have to do the work. You have to, if you really want to have the future that you want, you have to design that. If you want the job that you want, you have to design that. Or you may not know what that looks like, but it needs to become a little bit much solidified in terms of, okay, what is it that I really want to do? And a lot of that really requires that you do some soul searching. I'll tell you this, I love my job. I love my job. Most people, well, I wouldn't say most people, a lot of people can't say that. I love my job because I know that every day I go to work, I have the ability to impact people's lives. Business owners, when I step through the door, I know that when that business owner look at me, he's not, because he knows me, he's not looking at someone from the county that's going to collect a bill on him. He's looking for someone that he can bounce some information off on and make a good decision as far as hiring and training. So find what it is that you really want to do for the rest of your life. And as the old GECO, once you GECO CEO said that if you find that, you'll never work.
Yeah,
because you're doing your passion.
it's basically what Kelly has in her background there. When you love what you do, the world pays attention, and you never work a day in your life.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
I'll give it. Thanks, Kelly. That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's perfect. We didn't plan this, you guys. We promise.
That's good.
Well, that's what's great about this topic. So much of it does dovetail in. So, you know, like I mentioned earlier, you all work for, you know, completely different organizations, but the truth is, you know, there's a common thread behind what you do, regardless of the industry, you know, and so that's what's important to hear, you know, so what you each, you know, shake your heads, you know, nodding along like, yeah, exactly. What I want to echo what Kevin said and what Evan just mentioned, you know, that's the takeaway for the people watching the videos.
Especially what Kevin said, I like that at the end, you have to do the work, because looking for a job is just like having a job. You got to put in the time, you got to put in the effort, sweat, blood, and tears. You know, you're going to have your highs and your lows. You're going to have a lot of interviews one week. You're going to have no interviews, but you got to do the work.
And that, I remember that was something, Evan, that you had mentioned in your video. And I think my comment was, yeah, it's like a full-time job. You know, I remember after college, you know, after my first job, kind of being in that position, and it seemed like, you know, 8 hours a day, that's what I was doing until like, but I was determined at that point to break into higher education. So I'm like, I'm not settling for anything else. That's what it is. And that goes back to what Kevin said, you know, like you need to have that solid plan. What do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
So are there any final thoughts, or do we think that we have imparted, I say we, I'm using the royal we, I've done nothing here. Have we imparted all of the knowledge?
We have given them our absolute best.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot we haven't touched on, but if, you know, anybody wants to reach out to us, you can find us all on LinkedIn, network with us, connect with us, send us a message. You know, I love talking with people. You know, I talk to people all day, every day. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
That's great. And I do have all of your LinkedIn profiles. So in the follow-up, I'll post that. And I've been starting to ask chamber members that if they have job openings, send them to me, and I'm going to create a page on the Chamber's Landing site so that we can have some of that. So it's a little bit more local, but if anyone knows of anything, send it our way, because we want to keep the talent here as part of it, or bring more of it in. So sorry, Evan, you're in San Diego now. But
I'm in San Diego, so I can't help you there, but I will try.
You know, you're a good resource. So as long as people, you know, take advantage of the LinkedIn profiles and reach out, all of you are good resources. So, all right, well, we'll conclude our last session in this series, but I thank you all for your commitment to it, for your time, and sharing your expertise.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice meeting you guys.
Yeah, take care, you guys. Nice meeting you, Kelly and Kevin.
You too.